What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Shane Hoffman, and today I got a very special, very elaborate video for you, a step-by-step guide to six-pack abs. And if you follow my 5-step process, I guarantee you, not just guarantee you, I promise you, if you go all through my 5 steps here, guaranteed six-pack abs, and a damn good one at that, a damn good six-pack at that. But you have to follow all 5 of these steps, and you can't cut any corners. And we're going to go through all 5 of these in detail, okay? We have do you want abs and why? We have nutrition. We have conditioning and cardio. We have ab training. And we have consistency. We're going to go all through these 5 steps in detail, starting right now. Without any further ado, let's do it. Okay, so step number 1. Do you want abs? No, I'm serious. This is step number 1. And the reason this is step number 1 is because a lot of people romanticize and glamorize what having a six-pack means. And what I mean by this is you just see a picture of a body on Instagram, a snapshot of somebody whose photo was probably edited, or someone in a movie like Chris Hemsworth, who is most definitely edited, and they see this perfect body and go, I want that. I want those results. And what they don't understand, and what completely is just blind to them, is all the sacrifice, work, and hardship and effort that actually goes into getting that six-pack. And so the reason I ask, do you want a six-pack, is because a lot of people will say with their words that they want a six-pack, but their actions will be completely contradictory to their words. For example, they might say they want a six-pack and, oh, I want a great body and I want abs, but they're eating cookies every night. Yeah, you might say you want one, but your actions are completely contradictory toward it. And here's what I'm going to say about this is, it's okay if your answer here is no. Now hear me out for a minute. You might be thinking, but Shane, my answer is yes, I absolutely do want abs. I do want to look great. But we don't need to have abs to look great. We could separate the two. And I'm not trying to crap all over wanting a six-pack here. What I'm saying is think deeply. Do you really want one? Do you want the sacrifice of being in a caloric deficit and doing cardio? Because if being in a caloric deficit every day or for the majority of the time and conditioning and cardio makes you miserable, well, then having abs is going to make you miserable. If you want a six-pack, that means you want to voluntarily alter your social life with your friends and not have pizza and drinks on a Friday night. Now, before someone in the comment section goes, oh, I know this guy, or I am this guy where I can have drinks and pizza on a Friday night, okay, that's great for you. But if you already have abs and are eating pizza and having alcohol on a Friday night, there's no need for you to watch this. You could probably go. I mean, if you want to stick around and learn something, that's great, but you don't need this. You already are there. You found what works for you. This video is for the people that have not found what's worked for them. And if you're here looking for a step-by-step guide to six-pack abs, going out drinking on a Friday night, having excess calories and alcohol and pizza hasn't been working for you. But guess what? Maybe that social event, maybe that Friday night of pizza, maybe those 2 cheat meals a week, or whatever is more important to you than abs. And you know what? That's okay. Because guess what? If you really understand that the six-pack is not of the most importance to you and just having an overall healthy relationship with food, right? Being healthy is more important to you. That's okay. That is okay and that is fine. Okay? But first you have to really be honest with yourself. Do you want abs? Are you ready and willing to make the necessary sacrifices that it takes to have abs? And if the answer to this question is truly yes, then we need to move on to part 2 of step 1, which is why. Why do you want abs? Now, let me tell you something. I got abs here, okay? Got a nice fun six-pack here, but I'll tell you this. My why is not because I look good, okay? My why, to give you an example, is because I run a business and I am a personal trainer and a coach and a creator for you guys, to where I believe it is my responsibility to lead by example and demonstrate being above average in health and fitness. And not just above average, but the best possible version of my physical self that I could be. That's what I believe in. We don't have to have the same goals. Remember, this is how I make my living. Okay? So this is why I believe this. That is my why. That is why I get up, and if I don't feel like, if I see a piece of cake, I go, I can't do this necessarily right now because I would not recommend this piece of food to my clients. Some people say, oh, Shane, that's an unhealthy relationship with food. Is it? Do I really need to ingest poison? Because that's what it is. It's poison. To feel better about myself and say just live in moderation? That's just not the way I think. I think of food as fuel This is how I perceive it. I'm not saying you have to do this. You can enjoy your meals every once in a while, right? If you want to be healthy, you can't eat cake every day, guys. There's no way around it, right? But every once in a while, you can. It's just not something I typically necessarily do, even on my own birthday. It's just the way I'm wired, and it's because my why is strong. And if I want to be a role model for my clients, I want to achieve the best physicality of myself that I possibly can. And I'm going to have children one day, and when dad's walking around the house with his shirt off, I want kids to be like, that's dad. This is what dad looks like. And I want my wife, in my opinion, my future wife, deserves the best. And part of me giving the best is trying to look the best that I can. Not for her necessarily, for myself, but also because, yeah, she deserves something good to look at. And you know what? My girlfriend thinks the same way. My future wife thinks the same way. So that's my why. Your why could be you want to be the healthiest version of yourself for your family. And you know what? That's deep. And we can work with deep. But you know what we can't work with? We can't work with the superficial of, well, I'm taking this girl to the beach on Friday night, so you're not going to get very far with that. It can't be a superficial thing. It needs to be deep. There needs to be a deep-rooted why. With everything we do in life, there needs to be a why behind the what. The what is great. The I want abs is great. The I want the body is great. The I want the money, the car, the house. It's all great, but without a why, we're not going to do it. Okay? So, do you want abs? The answer to that question is truly yes, and you're willing to make the sacrifices for it. Now ask yourself your why. Once you have these two, then we can move on to step number 2. I might have lost some of you here. And some of you go, you know what, maybe I don't want abs. And you know what, that's okay. Stick around for the rest of this though, because we're still going to go over some important stuff, right? Just because you might not want a six-pack doesn't mean that nutrition, conditioning, cardio, and ab training and consistency are not important. They still are, especially if you want to be healthy and if you want to have a strong core. So still stick around, but it's okay. If your answer was no here, fine. But if your answer was yes to here and yes to here, let's get ready for step number 2. Point number 2 is nutrition. And if you want abs, if your answer, question 1 was yes, and you truly want abs, guys, there's no getting around it here, okay? There's no getting around step number 2. What we put in our body determines whether or not we're going to be able to see our six-pack. You might have heard the term abs are made in the kitchen. I disagree. I think abs are revealed in the kitchen. I think abs are made in the gym. You got to train your abs to get abs, and especially if you want them thicker. But abs are definitely revealed in the kitchen. And what you put in your body is crucially important when it comes to getting your body fat to a low enough percentage to see your abs. Now we're going to go over a lot in section 2 because I think section 2 is super important. Okay, it's going to be a hefty section. And this might be, again, where I lose some of you. I'm going to lose most of you in sections 1 and 2 more than any other, maybe except for section 5. But 1 and 2, definitely more than I will in 3 and 4. And that's why 1 and 2 are the first 2, because I know I'm going to lose you. And they're either the first steps that need to happen, but also because I know I'm going to lose a lot of you in here. But when it comes to nutrition, steps 1 and 2 tie in together very well, because a lot of the sacrifices that you have to make when it comes to wanting abs are with nutrition. That might mean Friday, Saturday nights, when we're going out with friends, we might be at that dinner table and they're all getting drinks and they're all getting burgers and we're ordering a salmon, or we're ordering a grass-fed steak, or we're ordering a grilled chicken, some sort of lean protein with fibrous vegetables and a healthy carb. And we're eating fruits. And when everybody's having cake at the office, you're saying no and neglecting it. Let me tell you guys a real story, what happens to me all the time. Besides working in this gym with my clients, I also work at a physical therapy clinic. I work closely with an incredible physical therapist. But around his office, every day there are suites come in and people, the coworkers, right? The other physical therapist aides and the assistants, right? And even the PT, the physical therapist, will sometimes bring in cookies and cakes and donuts a lot. And the running joke is, when is Shane going to have a donut? Because to this day, I have not accepted one. I've not accepted a bite of one. And people look at me like I have 7 heads. They think I'm too restrictive and they think I'm weird. And fun story for you, every girl that I've ever dated ever, when I've gone over and they've asked me to order dinner and they've ordered pizza and I've refused, the parents and the siblings and even the girl sometimes has looked at me like I'm crazy. These are the sacrifices that it takes. Most people don't make these sacrifices. But if you want abs, you're going to have to. And I'm not saying you can't be a human being and enjoy every once in a while, right? If you want to have a scheduled, strategic, cheat meal, one meal, once, or maybe even if you're starting from a lean place, right? And we'll cover that. But if you're starting from a lean area of already being low in body fat a couple times per week, then you can. But even if you're starting from a place where you're in low percentage body fat, if you're skinny, right? And you You want to have a more impressive six-pack, or you want to have like an actual six-pack, not just be skinny, right? The abs are a muscle and you need to fuel them with quality. Okay? And so when we talk about nutrition, not only does it have to be quality, you have to make sacrifices, but when I talk about nutrition and I talk about a six-pack, I mean getting a six-pack and keeping it for life. Not a short-term diet plan or a short-term fad diet like keto, carnivore, intermittent fasting, if it fits your macros, right? All these things work, but the problem is they're short-term. And unless you can stick with something for a lifetime, it's not worth it, because then if you put in a short-term diet, you know what you're going to get? Short-term results. Is that what you want? Do you want that? Do you want short-term results? Do you want a six-pack for a week or a month? You put in 2 months of work on the diet to finally get your six-pack and then gain all that weight back and lose it in a few weeks to a month? Is that what you want? Oh, no, but Shane, I know keto works. I know this guy that did keto and now he shredded. Okay, do keto. Tell me, you can do it for a week. You'll probably have some headaches and feel like shit, but okay, you can do it for a week. Maybe you can do it for a month. Can you do it for 6 months? Can you do it for a year? Can you do it for 5 years? Can you do it for 10 years? Can you do it for 20 years? How about 30? See where I'm going with this? I want you to adopt an eating approach that's going to last you for the rest of your life. And I don't give a shit what that is. I don't care what that is. If it's keto, great. If it's vegan, great. If it's intermittent fasting, great. If it's the air, great. Whatever style of eating that's going to work for you to keep you healthy, I don't care, as long as one thing, it has to be one thing. And it has to be something you can stick to for life. Has to be. Because if you don't stick with it for life, it's not going to work for you, or it's going to work for a period of time, and then in the long run, right, the ultimate investment will fail, because you're investing in yourself when you take pride in your nutrition. When you eat good foods and you invest in your health, it's an investment, meaning long term. But if you take the short term road on this, you will fail long term. And then you will say nothing works, and you'll throw your hands up in the air and quit. I don't want that for you. This is an easy approach. All you have to do for this approach is, the easiest way I could tell it to you is just eat healthy. Eat healthy. Here, I'll give you a visual. I'll give you a visual on it right now. The visual. Ready? Boom. Here's your little plate. You're going to divide your plate, okay, into little sections. We got protein, right? The biggest section. We got veggies and fruits here in the next biggest section. Then we got our carbs here in the last section here. Easy. Done. There you go. This is how to eat healthy. Just eat healthy. Pick a lean protein source. You got grilled chicken, you got fish, you got grass-fed beef, grass-fed steak. There's a whole bunch of things you can do there. You got your carb, right? Oh, but Shane, that's such a small section for carbs. Dude, I'm not saying have this much little carbs. I'm saying make the section of carbohydrates, which are the least satiating part of your meal and the easiest to overeat. Make it the smallest section and eat your protein and your veggies and fruits first. That way when you get here, you're pretty much already full. You eat your carbs and you're done. You can even have a little bit of pasta here. Or fuck it, you want to have a little bit of mac and cheese? Fine. Is it the healthiest thing in the world? No, but it's the smallest section here. If you eat your protein and your veggies first, you tell me how much mac and cheese you can fucking eat at that point. Let's see how much you can eat at that point, right? I guarantee you it's not going to be able to be that much. So I want you to eat your protein first, your veggies and fruits next, and your carbs. Boom. And just make it healthy. Don't overcomplicate it. Cookie, not healthy. Chicken breast, healthy. Rice, healthy. Banana, healthy. We don't have to complicate it. This section can be so simple. Not easy, because there comes sacrifices with it. And I understand people have issues with building habits and avoiding certain temptations, and that's okay, right? But if your answer is yes, then you're going to have to be willing to do this. And if your answer is yes, then you will be willing to do this. Okay? And this is an easy process to do that. You can do this for breakfast, lunch, and dinner right here. That's your toast. That's your eggs or egg whites. That's your spinach or your blueberries or your banana or your strawberries or all of them. Make it simple on yourself. Don't complicate step number 2. It's going to require some sacrifice. It's going to require some research. It's going to require playing around. There's no one approach fits all for this. This is very individual. You might have food sensitivities. You might have gut issues. You might have foods that just don't agree with you or make you sick, and you'll have to play around and find out what makes you feel good. And you know what? That's just the name of the game. If you want success in anything, that's how it works. This is no different. It's going to take work and sacrifice, but if you've already said yes to question 1, then you've already accepted the work and the sacrifice. Okay? All right, let's move on. Step number 3. Okay, so I know this is a lot, and I know this looks like a lot, but we're going to go over this, and this is step 3. Uh-oh, is my marker working? There we go. Step 3, cardio. Okay, steps 3 and 4 are going to be very lecture and science heavy, but I'm going to break it down for you. Okay, I'm going to try not to confuse you too much, but I do want you to understand some stuff. Okay, I'm going to break it down for you as simple as I possibly can, and I promise you it's going to be broken down into digestible little bites for you at the end of this video, so that way you understand the differences between everything that I want you to understand, and you know how to implement them, okay? I know this might look a little intimidating, or you might not even be able to read it because my handwriting sucks. That's fine. Just listen to me, okay? I'll break it down for you, I promise. So, step 3 is cardio and conditioning. Now, BIA, beginner, intermediate, advanced. I'm going to give you the prescription based on your ability level, and then I'm going to explain why I gave that prescription. So, beginner, you're going to walk 1 hour 3 times a week. So you're going to walk for an hour 3 times a week. That's 3 hours total of walking, okay? You're not doing anything else if you're a beginner, okay? Unless you're, and obviously I didn't write this because I wanted this video to be the step-by-step guide to get a six-pack, but there should be a weight training program along associated with this, okay? There should be. This section could be step 3 cardio and weight training, but to keep it simple, I made it step 3 cardio because if we want abs, we want to be in a caloric deficit. So cardio is an easy way to help with that, but building muscle will absolutely increase your metabolism, helping you be in a caloric deficit. In fact, it is probably the most effective way, and I prefer that over cardio. I'm stating that here, but it is not on here for simplicity reasons. But always, if it's advice coming from me, I believe everybody should try to be strong. I believe that strength training is one of the fundamentals of a healthy body. There's so many benefits, from bone density benefits to bone cell increase benefits, to not just muscular size, but functional strength, cognitive benefits, okay? Increased mobility, okay? If you fall, you have less of a chance of getting hurt. Your vertebrae, especially if you're doing kind of, weighted stuff, is going to thicken. It's going to get stronger. All your bones are going to respond with that way. You're going to have increased strength in your connective tissue and in your cartilage. So plenty of reasons to weight lift, okay? But for simplicity reasons, it's not here. But we're going to go and break down cardio now, okay? So beginner, 1 hour, walk 3 times a week, okay? Intermediate, you're going to jog 2 times a week, okay? So you're going to go for like a jog now. So you're not a beginner anymore. You're not overweight or deconditioned. You've conditioned yourself. You're going to jog 2 times a week, and 1 high-intensity interval training, HIIT, HIIT workout 1 time a week. Okay, if you're advanced, you're doing 1 to 2 HIIT and 1 to 2 steady state. Now, what's the difference between high interval training and steady state cardio? Well, I wrote it out for you, and we're going to go through this bullet point here, because I often get asked this question all the time, and you see this debate online all the time. What's better for you, high intensity interval cardio or steady state cardio? Both are great for you, okay? They're just different. They're just different. One will say HIIT has its benefits over steady state, and I'll go over those. But they're just different. HIIT only has one advantage over steady state that I'll go over. But even that advantage has limiting drawbacks, especially when we talk about pairing it in recovery and with not overtraining and overtaxing the nervous system with your weight training. Because like I said, you should be doing weight training. This is just a constant. You should be doing weight training 3 to 5 days a week, okay? So this is just a given, all right? Given. I'm going to write given here. Given. Okay? Given. When I say weight training, I don't mean with your abs specifically. We'll get into that. I mean weight training with your just whole body, right? Your legs, your chest, your shoulders, your back, all that stuff, right? But what are the differences here? Main difference is high-intensity interval training is what we called anaerobic exercise. Steady-state cardio is what we call aerobic exercise. What that means is anaerobic exercise, anaerobic means without oxygen, aerobic means with oxygen, which when we talk about energy systems, aerobic means with oxygen, so it's going to use what's called the oxidative energy system primarily, right? Because when you're running long distances, the body's working more, so it needs more oxygen to the muscle cells to provide it with energy. And how does it do that? Is the oxygen, right, allows for more mitochondria to then be utilized and help power that as a power source, so to speak, right? You might have heard mitochondria as the powerhouse of the cell. When we're doing aerobic work, right? Aerobic work is more oxidative, using more oxygen, meaning it uses the oxidative energy system. And with that, more mitochondria need to be present and need to adapt in order to keep powering that system, right? Think of mitochondria like the cell's battery power. It just keeps firing. If you're running for a long time, you need a lot of mitochondria, a lot of oxygen, a lot of blood, right? Or a lot of oxygen to be going through to your muscle cells, right? When we talk about anaerobic means without oxygen. Without oxygen, right, that doesn't mean that no oxygen is going to your muscle, guys. It just means minimal. It doesn't need much oxygen because the most work you're doing here is about 60 to 90 seconds of work, right? So it's a very fast, explosive movement, meaning we use, obviously, well, not obviously if you don't study this, but the systems we use for energy are the glycolytic energy system. Now, before someone writes in the comments, yes, I'm aware of the ATP-PC system, that's typically within the first 10 seconds of exercise, okay? So we could write the ATP-PC system, which is the adenosine triphosphate and phosphocreatine system, okay? Which that is also an energy system that is under anaerobic exercise. But to keep it simple, we'll stick with the glycolytic energy system because if you're doing high-intensity interval training, odds are you're working in that glycolysis, right, form of activity from anywhere from 30 to 60 to 90 seconds. Now that we understand that aerobic with oxygen runs on the oxidative energy system, anaerobic without oxygen runs on the glycolytic energy system, now we can break this down into the differences. We already have mentioned how if you're running for a long distance, your body needs more oxygen. And if you're exercising between 30, 60, 90 seconds, you don't need as much oxygen. What does this do and how does this affect us physiologically? Well, how this is going to affect us is the difference in the muscle type fibers that are used. So we have type 1 muscle fiber. MF stands for muscle fiber, by the way, guys, not the other thing. So with oxygen, right, the muscle fiber type that's going to use more oxygen is the type 1 muscle fiber. A type 1 muscle fiber is going to allow us to run longer distances and have more endurance versus a type 2 muscle fiber, right? And we can even break type 2 muscle fibers down into type 2A, type 2B, and I think there's even a type 2X now. If I go back to date with my literature and restudy, I think there's like a type 2A, type 2B, type 2X. But we can even break this down. Type 2A is going to be a mix of these two, right? So type 2A muscle fibers is going to be a mix between type 1 and type 2. And then type 2B and type 2X muscle fibers are going to be the explosive, fast twitch muscle fibers. What does that mean? That means these muscle fibers types respond better to high explosivity movements, such as when you're lifting weights, right? Poof, bicep curl is a high explosive movement, or a deadlift, right? You're here, poof, a high explosive movement, or a sprint, right? For a short burst of time. That's a high explosive movement. Look at the body of a long distance runner and a sprinter, and you can easily tell which muscle fiber dominance they are, type 1 or type 2. The long distance runner, if you look at his body type, he's definitely more type 1 muscle fiber dominant, and he's adapted more to running long distances and having more endurance. If you look at a sprinter, he's jacked, right? He's very quick, he's explosive. He might not be able to run as long, but he's mainly type 2 muscle fiber dominant, meaning he can be very explosive in his movements. This is why some people say that high intensity interval training is better than steady state cardio, is because of the fact that you get more of a type 2 muscle fiber activation, a much more activation of this than you do, which is going to ultimately, right, make you look jacked, right? However, here's where I disagree. That's not true. And here's why that's not true. Your muscle is not precious little snowflake that just withers away if you do steady state cardio and you just become a stream bean. Yes, it is true. You are working predominantly more endurance and type 1 muscle fibers when you do steady state cardio. 100%. I'm not going to debate that or debunk that because that's true. However, don't you think that you should train both? Don't you think it's important to have endurance and to work your heart for a period of time? And don't you think that mitochondria production, having more mitochondria, being able to produce more oxygen output, more stroke volume output, and challenge your heart for a period of time is important? Don't you think that having more blood volume, don't you think that having more red blood cell production is important? The answer is yes. And besides that point, when we take type 2 muscle fibers, guess what else uses them that you can do to train them? Weight training. And if you're training type 1 muscle fibers in a moderate way of not just running 10 miles a day, 6 days a week, well, then you're not going to get to a point at which you're a stick because you're doing it enough for enough of an effective dose, but you're not doing it to the point at which you're overdoing your steady state cardio. And that's the answer here. It's just don't overdo either of these. If you overdo this, what's going to happen is your recovery between this and this are going to clash. And if you overdo this here, what's going to happen is you will not be able to recover in time for your weight training. Don't believe me? You go do high-intense sprints, high-intensity interval training sprints before or after your leg day, the day before or the day after your leg day. And you tell me you're at 100%. You either tell me you're at 100% on your leg day the next day or your sprints the first day. You're a liar. Unless you're like, you have all the time in the world to do ice baths, sleep, right? If you don't have a normal schedule, then maybe. Even if so, you better be planning this in accordance with one another so that way you have proper time to recover. And that gets me to why I do like the steady state cardio is the recovery aspect. This type 1 muscle fiber stimulation is going to aid in type 2 muscle fiber recovery. Why? I'll tell you why. I'm sorry if this is getting super sciencey here, but it is because type 1 muscle fibers actually use lactic acid for energy. Lactic acid is what develops when we do a glycolytic exercise. For example, when you do bicep curls, eventually, right, there's a process in your body that happens within glycolysis. I won't get into the exercise physiology of it completely, but what happens is when you're doing a bicep curl, right, a buffer happens to where lactic acid is released in order to try to get your body to eventually stop. Right? That's why lactic acid is produced, is the muscle starts to get fatigued, so the body sends a signal, a bunch of chemical reactions happen, lactic acid is released, and you start to get fatigued. Calcium channels start to get interfered, and you start to not be able to produce as much effective contractions. Well, guess what? That shuts this off, in a sense. Doesn't really necessarily shut it off, but it halts the production of type 2 muscle fibers. You get fatigued, you got to put the bar down. Guess what? Type 1 muscle fibers, what do you do when you finish that hard set? You walk around the gym. You ever notice that? Get done with a heavy set of sprints or a heavy set of anything of weightlifting, and what does your coach tell you to do in sports? Walk it off. Well, why walk it off? They say walk it off because when you're walking and stimulating type 1 muscle fibers, they utilize lactic acid for energy. So guess what that does? When you walk around in the gym, right, in between your sets, when you weightlift, that helps you with recovery. So don't you think if you're going for a 1-hour walk 3 times a week, or maybe a light jog or a light walk, don't you think that's going to help with recovery? Absolutely it will, because you're stimulating type 1 muscle fibers, which are going to help with blood flow, which are going to help with red blood cell production, and which are going to help out flush out lactic acid. So I am in love with this for the fact that it can absolutely enhance and help with our recovery. Why do I like that hit a little notch above steady state? I'll tell you why. It's the one reason of EPOC and effort, and these are separate. But here's the thing with EPOC. EPOC means post-exercise oxygen consumption. And what that means is what's called, after you have a high-intensity interval training session, right, you go into what's called oxygen debt. And what happens is the body has to make up for that, right, and you essentially burn calories after high-intensity interval training. Here's the thing. It's minimal. Now, some people, there are studies to debate this and say, no, it's not minimal, it's actually this percent or it's this percent. Listen, every percent matters, and so I will agree that it's important and that any advantage we can get, we should take. However, here's what I'll say, okay? In the grand scheme of things, if you're doing everything else right, it doesn't matter all that much. Will it help? Sure, it will help. I'm not saying it won't help. But in the grand scheme of things, there's also been studies that have shown that steady state also has its own form of EPOC. So the research is up in the air with that one. But what I will tell you is, what I like about HIIT is effort. High intensity interval training. You have to put in your max effort with this. And that is what I appreciate about it, is the fact that it's not easy and you're going to have to put in effort. And the more effort you put in, the more calories you will burn and the more energy you will use. This was the cardio section. I know this was a lot. If you need to rewatch this portion, rewatch it for sure. I tried to break it down in simple fashion, but the answer is, this is the prescription, this is the reason why, and you should be doing both. Let's move on to section 3. Okay, step 4, we have made it to ab training. So you have gone through steps 1 through 3. You are dialed in on your nutrition, your cardio. You decided you want abs in step 1, and now you're ready to train them. Now, the reason I put step 4 ab training after step 3 is simple. You, until you're at a point where you're at a low enough body fat percentage, I'd say about 15%, right, and below, the only ab training you should be doing is in the bottom 2 categories here. You shouldn't be doing any cosmetics, especially these type of stuff here. You should do your compression training and stuff like that, right? So if you're a beginner and you want a strong core, I recommend doing some of this stuff, or just sticking with your weightlifting. That's going to be the priority right now, weightlifting and cardio. And doing more of this stuff as you get to 15% body fat or below, because now we're in the building process. Before we were in the fat melting process, now we're in the building process. If you're starting off and you're skinnier or leaner, you can start doing these things, okay? So, ab training. This might look complicated, right? It's not, but there is a science to it, and we have to break it down, and we have to understand how to train our abs properly. Don't be that guy in the gym doing 100 crunches, pulling on his neck on the floor. Please, I beg you. Don't be the guy just cranking out 600 reps on the ab machine in the back. I beg you. Let's train our whole core, okay? We can train our core here. We want to train our core, not just the first muscle, the rectus abdominis. Now, the rectus abdominis is your six-pack. It is the six-pack. It is this guy right here, 6 bumps that run on your stomach. And all this guy does is flexion and extension. And it does it in the form of top-down, meaning a crunch, and it does it from the bottom up, meaning a leg raise. Now, I'm a big fan of leg raises. Specifically, if you can do them, hanging leg raises. If you can't do them hanging from a bar, that's fine. Regress and do them on the floor, and you can do, if those are even too hard for you from the floor, you could do knee raises. But I'm a big fan of using our legs as resistance and weight for our abs to hold. Why? Because you can even just lay on the floor, if you're advanced enough, jump on the bar, and stick your legs out, and you can feel your tummy tighten. Meaning, you're using your legs as weight or resistance, and you're training your abs to be more stable. So the rectus abdominis is flexion and extension. And if we're going to sequence our ab workouts right, we want to do our sets of the bottom-up approach first, because those are going to be the hardest to do, because the legs are going to act as weight, and that's going to be more challenging than just bringing your rib cage down, right? So how do we take on the bottom-up approach? Well, I told you we could do a leg raise, we can do a hanging leg raise, and as we get fancier and more into it, right, more advanced, we can do circle leg raises on the floor, where we get our hips up off the floor and we raise our legs up in a circle, then we go the other way in a circle. We could do that from the pull-up bar, right, where we're hanging on the bar. These are all things that we can absolutely do. And I'm a big fan of leg raises because of how versatile they are in progression, as we just talked about, and regression. You could simply just do a knee raise, or go inside, those captain's chairs where you hold yourself up and then you can raise your knees. They have something for your back in most of them. So this is a very versatile way we train our core. Of course, then we have easy top-down crunches. Don't do sit-ups. Here's the reason I don't like sit-ups. Sit-ups mainly train the hip flexors. And the reason for that is because once you get past a certain degrees of flexion, your rectus abdominis is going to call for some help. And if you're coming all the way up from a sit-up, your abs are going to start to call for help from your hip flexors. And at that point, we're pretty much just training our hip flexors, not our abs, and it's pointless, right? We don't want a hip flexor pack, we want a six-pack, right? Not saying that the hip flexors aren't important, but they get a lot of work already, and they're typically already tight on people from daily sedentary activities. Another topic for another video. But we've covered the rectus abdominis. We can put a check. That wasn't too difficult, right? Schedule this one first before you do this one in your workout, before you do top down, and you're good to go. Rectus abdominis check. Moving on, right? We have to understand the muscles and their functions and give exercises that cover those functions and muscles, right? So we've covered the rectus abdominis for our ab workout, but our ab workout's not done. We still want to train the rest of the core, because we've got a core. Next, we have the internal and external obliques. And the internal and external obliques, right, are going to provide rotation, rotary stability, and anti-rotation, which means that they're going to rotate, right? And then, if I have a band, let's pretend I have a band pulling me that way, but I'm resisting that, they're going to prevent rotation, also anti-rotation, and provide rotary, rotational stability. So, you've probably seen people doing some of these exercises in the gym. Russian twist, right? With the ball, you may have seen people with their legs up and they're doing the ball, right? Twist. Now, here's the thing, most people do that wrong. When I mean they do it wrong, is they're just getting their hands to touch their sides. Hand. It's not doing anything. If you want to really challenge rotation, get your shoulder to the opposite side when you do it. And if you drop the ball and maybe even keep your feet on the floor temporarily, that makes a good progression to start for beginners. Is you can do that version of a Russian twist. Then when you get better at that, you can pick your legs up off the floor and go through that motion. And as you get better, you can add weight, right? There's one of your rotation exercises right there. You might have seen people do a band exercise, like a banded twist or a wood chop, right? That's a great exercise you can do. And then fun way you can even add your top down into that is you can do top down rotation. You take a high pull and pull down, crunch down, and across with the abs. Let it come back, crunch down, and across with the abs, right? So there are ways you can even combine flexion and extension, top down flexion and extension with rotation. And we can even combine, as we talked about previously, bottom up and rotation with, right, having the circle leg raise, whether you're on the floor or hanging from the bar. So you can even combine these movements here, right? And we talk about rotary stability and anti-rotation. If you do a bird dog, right? So you're on all fours, right? You're on all fours, your hands and knees. You kick one leg behind you, or one arm in front of you, sorry, one leg behind you. And now you're dealing with stability. Now your body feels unstable, and your core is working to fight rotation and be stable. And these are things that the internal and external obliques work on, and they're important. They also create that fishgill, right? That fishgill and V-line kind of tapering effect you see here, right? These are important for that in a cosmetic purpose, but they're mainly important for these functions of the core. And last but not least, we're going to cover one more thing after that I want to talk about. But last but not least, we have the transverse abdominis. And the transverse abdominis is probably the most important muscle on this list because its functions are compression and stability. Now, when I mean compression and stability is you've probably seen this muscle being worked by bodybuilders when they're training for a competition and they do this. They lift up their shirt, they want to create a vacuum, so they let out all their air and they bring their belly button into their spine. It's called a vacuum. And that's training the transverse abdominis. And this muscle's job, if we had a weight belt here, right? If you put a loop through a belt through the loop and you cinch down, that's quite literally what this muscle does. It cinches down to compress the spine, to protect our internal organs, and also make sure that we have a healthy spine and healthy vertebrae. Because if this muscle is weak in people, as a coach, and a lot of my clients, it's very weak when they came in and we test their core strength and it's weak. That is why a lot of people have back pain. Is if you have a weak core, right? If your core is not doing its job, something has to take over for it. And so the back goes, well, I'll do it, and we get this big arch here, right here, this arch here. Odds are you don't have a strong core. But ironically, most people think, oh, I need a strong core, and so they work these two predominantly this one, and these aren't the ones you need to work. Oftentimes, these can actually make your problems worse because of the flexion, and if you don't know how to properly train your abs, you're just worsening your hip flexor problem. When the real issue is here, in the transverse abdominis, and you need to do more things like planks and do them properly, right? Not with your ass in the air or your hip stiff, but with proper activation, pulling the ribs in, right? Proper bracing, as we covered, right? Making sure pulling the ribs down, and the vacuum. And now when we talk about a plank, there's another branch we can go to, right? We're all right over here, and that's glutes. I consider glutes as part of the core. And strong glutes mean a strong core, because if we have a strong hip extender here, right, that's what the glute does, hip extension, we can extend the hip strong, then the rest of the core can often follow with it, especially in a plank. Because if your hips are too high, you're not having proper glute activation. But I guarantee you, if you squeeze your butt as hard as you can in a plank, you'll be in the proper posture for it, I promise you. All right, well, I hope that this was simple enough that we broke down the muscles of the core, we broke down their functions, and the exercises you can do in order to achieve that. In the sequencing, you do your bottom up, right, movement first, your leg raise first, your crunches second, right? For your rotation, you got your rotation 3, your rotary stability, anti-rotation 4, and this 5. And there you go. This is your ab workout right here. From hardest, breaking it all the way down. You can even actually do this part right first. You can do this as a warm-up and then move into your bottom-up flexion and extension. And there you go. That's step 4, ab training. We're on to the 5th and final step. And the fifth and final step, but probably the most important of it all, is consistency. Because consistency is the key. Listen, you can get all of steps 1 through 4 right, but if you don't stick with it long enough, you won't be successful. And that's just the hard truth. It's gonna take effort, discipline, and consistency to get what you want, guys. If you are willing, I promise you, and I guarantee you at the beginning of this video, and I stick with that promise and guarantee, if you do steps 1 through 4, just like I taught it, if you do steps 1 through 4, and you full circle it with step 5, and you do it for a consistent, long while, and you don't give up, I guarantee and promise you X, but you have to be consistent. Well, how long do I have to be consistent? I don't know. I don't know where you're starting from. I don't know if you're starting from an overweight position or an underweight body position or from a neutral position, right? I don't know where you're starting from. Here's what I do know. If you are consistent and you don't expect immediate gratifications and immediate results, you will be successful. I promise you, you will be successful. But if you do steps 1 through 4 without 5, you won't be. The fifth and final step to having a six-pack is just that, consistency. Even after you get the six-pack, is consistency. Doing the things that you did to get the six-pack and keep doing them to keep it for the rest of your life. Guys, thank you so much for tuning into this video today. I know it was a long one, I know it was a heavy one, but I appreciate you if you really stuck around, and if you did, I know for a fact you got some knowledge and some value on how to, a step-by-step guide on how to not just get a six-pack, but keep it for the rest of your life. Thank you guys, and I'll see you all in the next one. Have a great night.